Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. We're here talking all things inner work. And this month, we are wrapping up our month of talking about rituals and practices with giving you some ideas on how to create your own simple ritual. So, Laurel, I love our topic for today, and I feel like this is going to be a little bit different. This is kind of a bonus Monday in October. We've got 5 Mondays in October in 2023 here. So it's going to be a little bit different. And sometimes when I was thinking about, us doing this podcast, I was even wondering if I should set some quiet music in the background for the listeners to really like set the tone and set the mood. What do you think?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I do think when we're talking about simple rituals,
Yeah.
If our listeners, if anyone out there does not have rituals in their life, and it feels like big, it feels like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
I want to remind our listeners and each other, that sometimes our rituals aren't peaceful and calming and there's no beautiful music in the background. Sometimes our rituals are, I'm going to put it we might call a habit or a routine, a habit or a routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a ritual is no different than a practice, a habit, a routine. And so it doesn't have to be this big thing.
Right. Right.
We'll talk more about how simple rituals can be.
Yeah, yeah. So Laurel and I, both, as you know, if you're a regular listener to our show, offer you up new moon and full moon meditations on the new moon of the month, the day of the new moon, and the day of the full moon. And so you can probably gather from that we follow the moon cycles. And we thought that would be, focusing on that as examples for today's show would be a helpful way for you to get a sense of what it is that a ritual, is and why it's important and how it can. And again, to me, I always think about ritual as a way to elevate your life, make life more sacred, give meaning to what you're doing in the moment. Like this is taking ownership and responsibility for making your life beautiful in the practices, right?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And that's exactly it. Like bringing yourself fully present in whatever moment you're in and creating a ritual around that activity, right? And so, one of my daily practices is my morning coffee. I love morning coffee.
Yeah.
And so I sit in quiet, in silence, often alone. And I hold my coffee mug in both hands and I feel the warmth of that mug in my hands, right? That's a ritual. I might close my eyes, right? But it's so different than 6 and 7 years ago when I had to be out of the house at 6:15 in my corporate job, and I grabbed my coffee and I ran to the bathroom and blew dry my hair and had a sip, and I, ran to the bedroom and got dressed with my coffee. That was not being present in the moment, right?
Right. When it wasn't calming to your nervous system. And I think that
not.
Most of the time ritual is calming to the nervous system. Yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I would say that for those that are listening and just heard that little bit and said, "Oh yeah, I relate to that. I'm always on the run, and I don't have time in the morning for sitting and holding my coffee mug and thinking nice thoughts." Right? You either claim and decide, "I'm going to get up 10 minutes earlier so that I can take 10 minutes to do this ritual, this practice to calm my nervous system, set my tone for the day," or you don't. I mean, it's like this whole idea of rituals is you deciding, I want the quality of my life to begin to shift to something that feels better to me. That's really the goal to me of a ritual. A ritual can have I think about prayer as oftentimes the more shall we say traditional kind of ritual, that you sit in prayer and maybe you have rosary beads or I don't know, whatever is attached to your practice or your religion or the spiritual path that you're following. And you're actually connecting, speaking into, right, a connection with something other than and beyond yourself. And so, the idea of claiming, right, the time to do this and making it an important practice is because you've decided that you want the quality of your life to include this kind of experience. And we're the only ones that can do that. We've come to be indoctrinated into a society and a world where we have to hurry, and the focus is on work and getting things done and producing. And that's not what this is about.
Yeah. And we have an opportunity. I mean, I talk about daily, right? My daily coffee, right? Maybe it's my daily bedtime routine, whatever. Maybe it's sitting down at a dining room table and lighting candles on the table, even if it's only my husband and I having dinner together on a Monday night.
Yeah.
How can you bring intention and create a ritual around things that are part of our life? Now, if daily rituals often feel like, I don't have time for daily rituals. That's why I think starting with the full moon and new moon, twice a month ritual is a beautiful way to begin a practice.
It is.
Maybe you only want to start with the full moon practice, but how can you begin to bring ritual into your life?
Yeah. Yeah. And to because I do think that, and I've watched this with women that gather with me and are new to the experience and then stay with the experience, how much it elevates their life experience and how much they look forward to it. And then they begin to adopt these smaller practices outside what we're doing together that begin to elevate their life experience. And they've decided they want to claim it because they feel better.
Yeah.
They feel good. They feel more connected internally. They feel like they're more connected with what they want and how they want to be and show up. And so, this is, to me, it's one of the beautiful a simple ritual practice is a beautiful pathway to getting connected with your own inner power.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
And I think also about the seasonal. I love seasonal rituals, right? And how,
Mhm.
I mean, I love the new moon and full moon. Those are kind of constants in my life.
Mhm.
I have a few daily rituals, but the seasonality, right, of creating a ritual around the beginning of each season also for me feels like welcoming, and being fully present and just shifting my attention with the seasons.
Yes. Yes.
And that's too, I mean, imagine if you only had 4 rituals a year. That's not a heavy ask, right?
I know it's not a heavy lift either. And it's
Yeah.
also, and I know for me, like I love spring and fall when I'm opening up my house because the doors can be open usually that time of year here and where I live. And I feel like I'm energetically like sweeping out my house, and inviting in a new season and a new time and a new way of being and looking at life, right? And it's the invitation to that to me also, as we go through this, why do we do this? It's like opening yourself up to the magic of life, right? That there's something more that we're connected to and can be in the flow of if we give it some good attention. And so this taking time, right, is our time to give it attention, that there's something more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the piece for me that comes in with
Mhm.
the moon cycle, with the season, the change of seasons, both of those for me bring me back to nature, right?
Yes. Yeah. The
You know,
rhythms.
the
Yeah.
rhythms of life, right?
Hmm.
And what I love, we have rhythms of life in within 24 hours. We have a rhythm.
Yeah.
Within a week we have a rhythm, within a month we have a rhythm, within a season we have a rhythm.
Yeah.
And so tying rituals to the rhythm of life
Hmm.
is really a great reminder that I am a small part of something much bigger,
Yes.
right? And not
Yes.
only am I alive, but the entire world, the universe around me is alive and cyclical.
Yes. And so I will add to my getting connected with your inner power. What I feel like what you just described really beautifully, Laurel, is a sense of your inner power is also connected to the greater power, right, of the forces of nature and life around you. And so it's putting those pieces together and feeling that and honoring that and tuning into it and living into it, in a
Yeah.
very purposeful, intentional way. So that's one of the things about ritual as we begin to so let's talk about some of the specifics that we actually
Sure.
do. So one of the things is being intentional, right? I'm intending to keep this ritual or this practice going. That's my intention. And then I put it in my calendar. It's part of my, the moon cycles are right there, new moon, full moon, right on my calendar days, right? When I show up, get them at the beginning of the year, grab them off of easy to find on the internet, right? Put them in my calendar. They're there. And then I know, as I'm leading up to it, I see it in my calendar. It's coming. Here comes the new moon. 2 weeks later, here comes the full moon. 2 weeks later, here comes the new moon. What am I doing this month? What am I focusing on this month? Right? What needs to be released? What am I bringing in? Right? So
Yeah.
when Laurel and I are talking about new moon, full moon, oftentimes what we're connecting, the rhythm that we're connecting, or the one that we're offering to you most often, is a sense of at a new moon, it's the beginning of a moon cycle. Our ability to see the moon grows, so we call that a waxing moon, right? This is a growth cycle or an expansion cycle. And then when we get to the full moon, we go to the contraction cycle. And so we come into a release, more of a release state or release work. And so, Laurel, talk a little bit about your new moon ritual. Let's
I
just,
will.
yeah,
Be-
give some examples. Yeah.
before I begin that, you had
Mm,
mentioned waxing when
mm,
the after the new moon, when the light of the moon is increasing in the sky, that's waxing.
yeah.
You didn't mention the word
The waning.
waning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Waning is after the full moon when the brightness of the light of the moon is diminishing.
Yes.
And so waxing and waning. And it's they, the moon dates are in my calendar as well.
Mm,
For our listeners who love apps, there are some free apps out there that tell you the moon cycle and exactly where the moon is in its cycle.
mm,
So my new moon rituals, I love the new moon because one, the sky is dark. The moon is not visible. It's not bringing light to the earth. Um, and if it is a clear night, the stars are brighter than ever.
yeah. Yeah. So
So
beautiful.
so when I think about my new moon ritual, often I am stargazing. I am just taking a few moments to look at the night sky,
Mm,
know the moon is there,
mm,
you know, ask the moon, ask the universe, whoever I'm asking, um, to bring in what I want next in my life in this next cycle, right? So all of my new moon rituals are tied to creation.
mm,
What I want to bring forward. It might be planting seeds at the new moon if it is a season where planting is okay. In New
mhm.
England,
Not
it's
so
a
much.
season, right? Um, Water is a big one for me as well. Being in the water, often my new moon ritual includes a bath. It might be a lit candle by the bath. It might be some soft music by the bath and some time to be in water, which water, symbolically for me is the cleansing, the clearing of of what was,
Mhm.
especially when you think about getting out of the water, whether you are getting out of a bathtub, whether you're getting out of a shower, out of a lake body, right? The water comes off from you.
Mm,
Um, Tying a ritual to water is a beautiful practice for me.
yeah.
Um, and I think no matter what activity I do, if it's planting or water based or stargazing, I'm a writer. I often journal. Um, what is it I want to create in this next season? And it might be just the next 2 weeks before the full moon. What do I want to grow in my life? What do I want to bring forth in my life? Um, writing it down, right? If you don't
Putting
want
words
anyone
to
to,
it. Yeah.
bringing words to it.
Yeah.
I have been known to do, we both have incantation jars now that you
Hmm.
introduced me to that.
Yeah.
For our listeners, Laurel can correct me if I'm wrong, but an incantation a jar is simply a jar in which you write what you want, put it in the jar. And so my practice is and has been in the winter, believe it or not, to take the contents, the little strips of paper in my incantation jar at the new moon, put them in a little ball, crumple them up, dig a little hole in the snow, put them in there and light them on fire.
I love that.
So
Yeah.
I have the essence of all that I want go, the energy of that going off into the universe, um, melting the snow right around it. It's not a very big fire, of course.
Hmm.
But that too is just a little something. And so if you don't want anyone to read that which you want to call into your life, burning it is acceptable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Releasing it into the energy, into the world. Um, and sometimes I keep my writing so that at the full moon, I can look back on it,
Hmm.
right? What have I been growing in the last 2 weeks? What has come forth? What do I need to replant in the next full moon?
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that gives us a little bit of an idea of some of the things I do.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that too, it's a lot of ideas around just the thinking about, this idea of the coming and going, the contracting and expansion of life, the life and death cycle. I think oftentimes I know in my own trajectory of my own growing spirituality and understanding and moving through my own healing and growing path that this attunement to we're only here for a brief time and accepting that and living into not knowing how long we're here for and claiming uh, you know an immediacy of this moment and using it well is part of the idea of even just getting more connected to this cyclical idea, right? Is yeah, the sense of temporary human, you know, physical material, right? It comes and it goes, or it changes form, and so I think it allows us an opportunity to 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 claim a little bit more urgency about what matters to us, right? What gives us meaning in our lives. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's a real great wake up, shake up. Yeah.
it really is. And it helps, for me to think about we are always creating and releasing. We are always, you know, birthing and dying, right? We're there. That is a constant cycle. And when I stop every 2 weeks to notice that cycle, it often makes me feel like I'm not stuck in whatever phase I am right now.
Yes.
I'm not stuck there. It's changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
One last thought about the new moon. It's a perfect time for a vision board, creating a vision
Mhm.
board of what you want to bring in.
Yep.
Um, and even writing a letter to your future self, right?
Mhm.
Um, who are you in the future after this cycle of creation?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, so full moon ritual for me, I've been doing full moon gatherings since I want to say 1994 or something like that. I don't know.
A
Whoa,
long
whoa,
time.
whoa, whoa, that's a long time. No, not that long. I want to say not that long because well, yeah, maybe because I started doing them really monthly sometime after 1997. But before that, I had friends that we would get together and we started doing some ritual work, some ceremonial work, and some gathering around particularly the solstices. I love the solstice time, both solstice summer and winter for really feeling like you're starting a bigger cycle, right? A longer cycle. But the new moon is a great shorter cycle time. And so my gatherings here at my home base have usually been around fire ceremony. And I loosely now follow the tradition that I did my medicine wheel work in, which is Incan, South American traditional shamanic practices. And I say loosely follow them because I feel like I feel like because I don't walk that path really rigidly and strictly, I don't feel like it's mine to share in that specific kind of way. And so I've modified to a certain extent, the process itself to feel like I'm just inviting people in to again experiment and allow yourself, give yourself the opportunity to do what feels right for you. And I feel like that's one of the things that oftentimes, if you're connected to a church and church rituals, they give you what you're supposed to do versus you feeling into what feels right for you. And oftentimes you don't feel powerful in that. And I know for me, rituals are so much about claiming, who you are and how you want to be in the world. So this full moon process for me is opening a sacred space where I feel like this is a time when we're setting it aside from normal daily living experience and we're asking for all that is around us to support us in this work. And we come with some specific work to do. We're all invited to actually come and have prepared for fire so that you are either releasing something or, looking for some sort of shift or growth in your life. And I prepared my fire ahead of time. I have a particular, container that I use to build my fire in, and I dry flowers from my garden all year long, and I use them to decorate the fire with. So it's very ceremonial feeling and looking, and often is very beautiful. And so we open sacred space. The fire has already been prepared. We all gather around in a circle, and we actually walk around the fire for a little bit. And the goal of that is to meet energetically the fire. So it's almost like your intention is to take yourself to fire, take what you're offering to fire, and meet it in the best, most I guess, synchronistic way that you can, right? And oftentimes we've written something ahead of time, some sort of letter or release or list. Sometimes I'll take old things if I've been moving through my home and I realize there's some stuff here that I no longer want to hold on to. I don't want present in my home. I'm completing certain things. Those are things that I'll bring to fire and release them and ask for them to be complete in my life as my sort of transformational experience that I'm looking for. So I'm really, really trying to be clear. So, we take that, we bring it in, we put it in the fire. We often have a stick or something burnable. I might have another dried flower or whatever that I put as an offering to the fire as a thank you, gratitude for accepting the work and doing the work with me. And then after everybody's had their turn at the fire, which happens quietly. This is a very quiet experience. It's not a lot of, there's no talking usually at this point. We open space, everybody circles the fire, everybody has their moment at the fire. It's quiet, it's peaceful. We're all holding space for the other person while they're making their offering and being clear in what the work is and the transformation that they're looking for. And then afterwards, that's a time when oftentimes I'll just open up the space for if anybody has anything they want to say. Sometimes we'll just offer gratitudes in that moment if I feel like that's what feels like is being called for us, through me, to just highlight and increase that vibration in general in the world. And so we'll share a little bit and then I'll close space and we might stay and chit chat a little bit or we'll just disperse depending on the weather. Oftentimes. And that's it. And it's beautiful, and And I think one of the things I love about it is, if you have a community that you can grow to do this with, is you start to have a sisterhood or community connection where people are really getting a sense of who you are, the work that you do, your intentions for your life, and they're there to support you in that. You're really being held in that work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is so beautiful.
Mm.
And I know, for our listeners, if you're looking for a fire circle or a ceremonial community,
Mm.
I'm going to say Google, right? I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
in New Hampshire, I've not participated in any of those, but there are a couple that I know of just from a quick Google search, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And look for that and become part of that, or create it for yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, it really reminded me of a couple of things I want to share. Now, many of our listeners, and Laurel, you know this, but I spend 6 months of the year at a house that my parents bought in the 70s, and it's a seasonal property at the beach. It's not winterized, so we close it down. We blow out the pipes and close it down. And whether it was 2 years ago, I believe, that I happened to mention to Deb Ayer, who has been a guest on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
She is a network chiropractor. She is works in the energy world, about this sadness that I felt every year closing the house down. And she suggested to create a ritual around the closing of the house,
Yeah.
to honor the house, to thank the house, to gratitude, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Rather than a loss,
Yeah.
bring it into a gratitude practice for everything this house has given me in this last season. So
Yeah.
I did that.
Mm.
And it really changed my emotion tied to my moving into my next season.
So beautiful. I
Right?
love that. It's such a concrete and perfect example of the power of ritual and actually transforming your experience.
Yes, yes. And I have one more I want to share.
Mm.
Um, my husband and I went to Hawaii, to the Big Island. I think it was in 2017. And we did a sunset stargazing tour at Mauna Kea, which is 14,800 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
And we did it with a tour group. And our tour guide was a native Hawaiian. And he was telling us that as you start up on the road to Mauna Kea, because you can drive, vehicles can go all the way to the top, that there's an altar at the base of the road where you ask permission to pass. You set your intention, or you tell the gods your intention of being there, and you bring a gift. There's a second altar at 8,000 feet elevation at the visitor center, maybe a quarter of a mile behind the visitor center. There's a third altar that only Native Hawaiians can go to at the top. But when we got to the visitor center, 8,000 feet above sea level, I said to my husband, we're going to walk to the altar because I want to do this practice. And he thought I was nuts, but we did it. And it was the most beautiful thing. Now,
Mm.
I was worried that I was going to have altitude, some effects of altitude. I had never been that 8,000 feet, never mind 14,000 feet above sea level. I'm a sea level girl.
Mm.
I did not have any queasy effects of altitude. My husband did feel a little bit of it. And I claimed that I didn't, because the gods protected me because I did the ritual at the altar.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
know.
asked permission, I
Mm.
set my intention, and I brought a gift.
Mm.
And it,
Yeah.
thinking about that story reminds me, we've talked about creating altars in other episodes, right? Creating an altar is a beautiful way to start your ritual practice
Yes.
in
Absolutely.
your own home, right?
Yeah.
So
Again, a couple of things that came up as you were speaking, and we'll kind of wrap up with this. And I want to offer this up maybe as a challenge or a takeaway, for the people listening today, is what would be your version of this, right? is the idea of giving back, the gifting, right? And as part of our, I didn't mention this, but as part of the full moon ceremony, I ask everybody to bring an offering for Mother Earth. And I have a tree somewhere in my yard that circles somewhere around wherever we have been gathering. And we pick that's the tree for the month that we make offerings to, and I make offerings to throughout the month. And it's a way of acknowledging, and this is very, again, this is all symbolic, very symbolic, right? Is the idea of you are taking the time to acknowledge that, you get air from the trees around you, oxygen, you get food from Mother Earth, even though you're going to the grocery store to get it. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Mother Earth. Like you're taking the time to actually acknowledge the gift and giving back. And this is the idea of reciprocity and feeling like you are engaged in a life cycle that you are a part of, that you're giving and receiving. And this is part of the thing that we're talking about that makes it all feel different.
It really does. And when I did the ritual for this house, it was the giving back for all this house has given me over my lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over the last season, right? And so I think that offering, right? We are bringing ourselves in with an intention and a gift.
Yes.
So
yes.
What a beautiful conversation.
And I want to come back to your morning coffee because I love, I saw, and I've gone through cycles where I remember this and then I forget it. And right now I'm in one where I forgot. So again, you go back to, do we all do this perfectly? Do we all do it just right? Do we all commit and then keep the commitment the whole time? No, not necessarily. But this is one of my favorite things. And I'm going to go back to, I'm going to try really hard to engage this practice, but I love it. It's so simple. It's taking your cup of coffee or my cup of tea. For me, it's cup of tea. And before you take your first step, walking outside and dripping a little drip of that, the first sip goes to Mother Earth as a thank you for the tea, for the coffee, right? You wouldn't have it if we hadn't gotten the coffee and the tea and the beans and the leaves from the ground, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And the people. And it also, for me, sometimes I think about, wow, the people that are out there that picked those tea leaves, right? And then the people that went somewhere and they got bagged or they got put in, it's recognizing just such a big part, a small part of a big, huge enterprise of life,
Yeah, the life cycle, right?
Oh, yeah.
It is. It's so grand. Oh, yeah.
So Laurel, amen. Thank you for taking the time to share simple rituals. Some of these are so simple.
They are. And I can't wait to join your fire circle ritual.
I know.
On an upcoming full moon.
Absolutely. Or when you're here, we might hold a special one if it's not full moon time, just celebrate you.
I might have to plan my trip around the full moon.
Okay, let's do it.
Saying. All right. As always, wonderful to be with you.
You too. Thanks everybody for being here with us. We love you. We love that you're part of our circle, and we'll be back for more.
Looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Bye.